Perfect. Welcome, everyone. This coffee hour is being recorded for those who couldn't be here and for those who are here and would like to review anything that we cover today. You'll be able to find this and all of our other coffee hours, along with recordings of workshops, certification help, newsletter previews, and a great deal more on our YouTube channel. Search YouTube for Sustainable CT and you'll find us there. We'll also drop a link in the chat. You'll also find a direct link to our YouTube channel in our monthly newsletter called the Actions and Impact. A link to all of our newsletters is in the chat. As you've registered for this coffee hour, you probably already do receive our newsletter, but if not, check it out. We try to keep it fun and informative. You can easily subscribe at sustainableCT.org by clicking the sign up button at the very bottom of the page. While you're on our website, be sure to check out this month's episode of The Impact, a Sustainable CT podcast. New episodes are available on the 15th of each month on our website, our YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. This month's episode is all about urban and community forest systems. This summer's cohort of Sustainable CT Fellows analyzed data from all 169 Connecticut municipalities to build the first of its kind database of tree ordinances and zoning laws. Guiding them through the process was Dr. Danica Dorosky, Urban Forestry Coordinator with the CT Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and Drew Goldman, Urban Conservation Director with the Nature Conservancy. Dorosky and Goldman joined guest fellow hosts Anna Hillary and Grace DeTuno to talk about the project and how it could inform and benefit municipal decision-making in the area of urban and community forestry. Guest producers of this month's show are Natalie Crowley and Maya Aviles. Jim Hunt just smiles and waves. And we want to thank all of the municipalities that have met the deadline for our fall certification cycle this week. Bravo, great job, fantastic. We look forward to reviewing all of the materials in the coming months, and we'll have complete results in early October. Thanks again for all of your hard work and dedication. It means the world to us, our program, and to all of Connecticut. We will be honoring all of our 2026 certified communities and climate leaders at our annual awards celebration at the Wadsworth Athenaeum in Hartford on November 10th. We'll have complete information on that very soon, but please do save the date for us. Our annual fall event is always a lot of fun and a great place to connect with your peers, so we hope to see you there. Once again, that's November 10th. Okay, now that all that's out of the way, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan Ensling, the Sustainability Manager of Hartford, who's kindly here to talk to us about sustainable procurement.
Thank you. Let me just go ahead and share my screen. All right. Can everyone see it? Okay, great. Let me get to it. All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome, and thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here. My name is Ryan Ensling. I am the Sustainability Manager for Connecticut's Department of Administrative Services, and I'm excited to walk you through Connecticut's Environmentally Preferable Purchasing Policy, our EPP program. So during the session, we'll be talking about what the new policy means, how we came to build it up, and most importantly, how agencies and municipalities can put this into practice. So our goal today is to make this feel practical and approachable and relevant to your day-to-day procurement decisions. So let's kind of begin at the beginning. What is environmentally preferable purchasing? So it's essentially a procurement strategy to purchase goods and services that reduces the negative impacts on our health and the environment. And it also encourages manufacturers and consumers to consider environmental impacts of their choices when making purchasing decisions. So to start, let's kind of get the lay of the land. This grounds ourselves in the policies and mandates behind Connecticut's EPP work. These aren't standalone ideas. These are part of a larger legal and executive framework. So we have a statute that lays the foundation for procuring environmentally preferable and recycled products. Last year's legislative session in Public Act 25-125, it expands on the environmental protection and renewable energy development. So in Section 10 of that Public Act actually requires DAS in consultation with the Office of Policy Management to develop an EPP policy for municipalities if they want to use state contracts and participate. But we made it available so that other for state agencies, municipalities, and really any other entities that use state contracts can look to our policy for guidance and if they want to create their own. And then In 2019, Executive Order 1 was issued. It's actually Governor Lamont's very first executive order when he came into office. It actually expands on the state's Lead by Example program, which is now called Greener Gov, if you're familiar with that. So it reinforces the state's commitments around reducing our greenhouse gas emissions, our waste reduction, and our water consumption, and and try to improve our state buildings. And also looking at our procurement related emissions. So the product we're purchasing, how they relate to our greenhouse gas emissions. So together, these directives are going to help shape the expectations for agencies and local entities and kind of set the tone for sustainable procurement statewide. So part of the planning here, this slide will kind of help lay out the development of the policy. So as soon as the Public Act was issued, we, started off right away and kind of figure out who should be part of these conversations. So we had our procurement team at DAS. We have folks over at the Office of Policy Management, and we also had folks from the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection because we really wanted subject matter expertise into the conversation to help shape what this policy will look like. So during these meetings, we figure out what is our scope, what's the timeline, because we had a January 1 of 2026 deadline to make sure this was already up and approved and everything submitted. And then who are our stakeholders? Who are we trying to engage with and get information? So as time went on, we did a lot of research, see what programs are currently out there in Connecticut and see what other towns, if they've done any sort of EPP policy on their own. We looked at other states and their municipalities to see if they've had any EPP programs. Massachusetts has been a leader in this, so we really look to them for guidance in this topic and help us shape what we want to do for Connecticut. And so through all the research and everything, we were able to draft our policy. And then it came to engagement and approval. So from there, we started collecting feedback. We would share this with organizations like Sustainable CT and other municipal organizations to have them look at it, provide any comments, any feedback, anything we should add or remove, things like that, before finalizing and submitting it to our leadership here at DAS. And then once we got that approved, we moved into implementation, submitted to OPM and the legislators. We did a lot of online and posting on social media. We've actually completely redid our website on EPP. Before, there wasn't really too much information, and now there's a lot more resources, which I will go in and actually show you the website later on in the presentation. And so parallel to a lot of this ongoing work is rebuilding this program by developing different resources. We're looking at developing a baseline on our greenhouse gas emissions for product purchasing, creating maybe a database or looking into a database, start collecting this information and housing it and start reporting off of it, delivering education and training, and updating our contracts with EPP language. So this program, we're kind of starting from the beginning a little bit and hoping to continue and evolve this as the things go forward in the future, things change. We want to evolve with things as they progress. So this slide is just kind of a snapshot of like what the components are from our policy. Starting with the purpose and the legal foundation, we have several statutes, public acts, and executive orders listed in the policy that we'll show you in a little bit. Then we want to focus on what's the objectives for the policy and potential exemptions. We don't want this policy to interfere with anyone's business operations. We do understand there could be some limitations, such as like economic feasibility, maybe availability of certain products that aren't available that are green or sustainable. Or if you're in an emergency, sometimes that happens where you're not able to do something, purchase something in green. So we do take things into consideration. Things happen. And then I'll go in more detail on the review of our environmental sustainable factors that agencies and municipalities should consider. And then kind of finish with some of the best practices for sustainable procurement that we came up with, but are not limited, and we hope to expand onto in the future. So together, these sections, sorry, Um, I'm pressing the wrong button. Together, so these sections build a functional purchasing framework that we hope is going to be very practical going forward. All right, so looking at our factors here when making decisions, we got to think about what's the life cycle of the product. Can it be recycled? How do we dispose it properly? What's the end life of the result for it? Looking at our GHG footprint, what it's made of, thinking about embodied carbon materials like our building materials, things like that. Our packaging shipping impacts on the environment. What kind of shipping or packaging products are used when shipping things. Toxicity and pollution considerations like air emissions. What's our waste generation? How do we minimize our waste consumption? Looking at our energy consumption, think about what energy efficiency products are out there, or appliances or building equipment, and think about can we install renewable energy like solar or geothermal? Think about our water conservation, limiting our water use, especially during drought situations, ensuring we're not depleting our natural resources. Think about our human health effects, any negative impacts on that and the environment from our products and services, and also looking at economic benefits and reducing any financial risks. Think of the long term better than the short term. There are economic benefits for going green, with more sustainable products, things like that. And look at vendor diversity and equity and think about purchasing, from local vendors or if things are locally sourced. That's always important to look at. And then are the products eco-friendly? Look at different standards and labels that you might see on the package, like Green Seal or Energy Star, are some examples. So considering these factors help ensure that purchasing decisions kind of contribute to sustainability and it's not just compliance. So go into the best practices. Um, to translate a lot of these goals into practical actions, we set some best practices, but again, these are just what we have in the policy, and we're open to other practices that we might not have thought of. So to start with, think about your strategy and your policy. How are you going to integrate sustainability into your operations, into your contract language, your product specifications, and procurement workflows? Engaging with stakeholders is key. Evaluate suppliers' performance, engage them on the long-term sustainability goals you have, and make sure employees get proper training. Source reduction, choosing products that are durable, refillable, able to reuse or remanufactured, and picking low packaging items. For electronics and appliances, prioritize donating them if they're still in great use, properly recycle them. There are around Connecticut different recycling centers for electronics, or even some towns do provide um, certain dates throughout the year where you can bring your electronics to drop off. And consider products that are bio-based. Are they renewable materials? Can they be biodegradable or compostable? Or alternative fuels and vehicles and equipment. If you have a gas-powered vehicle and you're able to kind of switch that to a hybrid or an electric vehicle, there's a one-to-one match. Look into doing that. Think about your fleet, how often you're driving, those situations. As far as landscaping equipment, think about zero emission ones, going from a gas-powered leaf blower to an electric or lawnmower are great practices. Avoid toxic and harmful chemicals like PFAS and lead and asbestos, and choosing certified safer alternatives. Purchase cleaning products that meet or exceed third-party certification standards, and purchasing office equipment that meet a minimum of the Electronic Product Environmental Assessment Tool, or EP, as part of your criteria. And recycled content purchasing supports, recycling markets and reduces environmental impacts, such as, printing paper and other products that contain, no less than a minimum recycled content established, or standards established by EPA. And then during, construction or deconstruction, renovations, think about if any of the materials can be salvageable, like furniture or appliances, anything can be reused. And then also disposing hazardous items properly, like certain lighting, there's chemicals in that, or refrigerants, from appliances like refrigerators or HVAC equipment. And for landscaping, choose native, drought-tolerant plants, avoid invasive species, work with contractors who follow sustainable land management practices, like reducing the need for watering and herbicides. And then when it comes to energy efficiency and water efficiency, look for products that have Energy Star labels, are low flow fixtures, plumbing. If you have irrigation systems, update that to be more water conscious. If there are no like Energy Star labels or anything like that, purchase products that might have that are upper to 25% of energy efficiency. And you can get some information from the Federal Energy Management Program from Department of Energy if you are interested in that. As far as green buildings, Connecticut does have strict building codes. We do want to make sure we're building our buildings are as efficient as possible. So we follow high performance building standards, use low embodied carbon materials, encourage, maybe your staff on your team to get certified in relevant green construction standards and programs and work with contractors that are certified in those. As far as renewable energy, like I mentioned, look to see if you can install any renewable like solar or geothermal or ground source heat pumps. And then as far as your electricity supply, see if you can source that, and have, 20% or more at least come from renewable energy for your third party supply. And if possible, look at purchasing co-ops. Can you collaborate with other agencies or municipalities to kind of scale your sustainability and leverage shared contracts? And then finally, as far as best practices that we have, set measurable goals and key performance indicators. For example, tracking percentage of EPP sales versus non-EPP sales. And this is something we're actually going to start doing going forward. We just started getting a couple sample reports from a couple vendors. So we're starting from kind of, I don't want to say square one though, but from the beginning to start seeing how are we doing on our end. And so requiring suppliers to provide this data to help monitor our progress and collaborate regularly with the suppliers and stakeholders for regular review, for any new opportunities to kind of improve, your policy and your program. So like I mentioned before, we did update our website. So really quickly before I show you, so this is what the page looks like. On here, we have our policy. We also have a list of contracts that do support EPP. We have templates that we've seen from other uh, local municipalities, but also from other states. So if you're interested in developing your own policy, here, provide some templates for formatting. We have lists of Connecticut programs as well as other states and federal programs. We have other resources from other organizations like Sustainable Purchasing Leadership Council. And we also have lists of what eco certifications are out there, standards, and some performance measurements for EPP. So I'm going to quickly share the website, hopefully. Please let me know if you can see that. Okay. So if you go to the Department of Administrative Services homepage and you click on procurement and then click on environmental preferable purchasing, that
We
brings you
still
to this.
see your presentation if you
Ah,
switch to the other screen.
all right. Thank you for letting me
Yeah,
telling me that. All right. Let's. All right. How about now?
perfect. I see the website.
Okay. Thank you. All right. So like I said, here's the page. This is, you go to DAS website, go to procurement, and then click on environmental preferable purchasing. It brings you straight to the site. So right off the bat, you have our policy, which I'll open really quickly. So here's all the information, the purpose, the legal framework. You see all the different statutes we have around cleaning, recycling, fuel efficiency, things like that. Um, Pretty much everything I kind of outlined already is in this policy. And we do see this as an evolving policy, like I said, with as things change in the future, better standards, um, more best practices, we hope to update this to stay with the times here. Um, and then we have the list of our state contracts that show or have that support EPP purchasing and products. So we have the title of the contract with the number and what the descriptions are, and if it's for product or service or maybe both. And as we incorporate EPP into our contract languages and get more information from vendors on what they actually provide when it comes to green products, we'll update this to reflect that more. Because before we didn't have language to incorporate into contracts, now we do. So we'll keep this as updated as possible. And like I mentioned, we have other templates, Connecticut programs, other state and federal programs, other resources from other organizations, um, EPA's recommended eco labels and other measuring EPP tools. And then we have a frequently asked questions. So if you're curious or um, have a question, if it's in here that can answer, great. If not, feel free to reach out and we'll try to incorporate that in here. So then let me go back to the presentation. All right, you can see the presentation.
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. So looking ahead, um, one thing we actually did do at the beginning of the year, which we're pretty happy about, is we worked with the Attorney General's office and got approval to incorporate EPP language into future RFPs and state contracts. And we already did that with a couple of them this year. So we're happy and going to do that moving forward. Um, and, if we need to amend the language to be more stricter as we develop this program, we will. We're looking at developing a baseline. We already have a baseline when it comes to our energy, for our buildings and everything. But part of Executive Order 1 that we haven't really looked into is our product purchasing. So collecting information from our vendors to help develop this GHG baseline for products is going to be important as our overall goal in the state to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And we hope to start monitoring this and maybe reporting this into the overall Greener Gov report that comes out each year on our products and services. So really working with our vendors to collect data and figure out how we're going to track this and report, as well as education, expanding that and training offerings, making sure our procurement team is up to speed on EPP, what specifically we want to ask from vendors, what we want to show, collect, and then producing maybe some new resource documents. Like I mentioned before, Massachusetts has been really helpful. They have a lot of resources and documents that we're looking and seeing, can we do something similar going forward? So that kind of comes to the end of my presentation. We hope to make EPP a natural part of our procurement process and not just make an added step. We're I don't want to say this is a new concept because it's not though, but we are starting, kind of brand new and really developing this and become a strong program going forward. So uh, if there's input or things you'd like to see, feel free to contact me. Here's my email address. We're always looking for guidance and input here and want to collaborate. So if we're missing anything you think we should add, let us know. So I want to thank again to Sustainable CT for letting me speak here, and happy to answer any questions, or if I can, happy to try to get the answers for you and take this offline. So thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Does anyone have any questions? You're welcome to come off of mute and ask, or if you don't want to come off of mute, you can drop them in the chat and I can read them.
Yo. Hi, Ryan. It's nice to see you again. Thank you so much for giving this presentation. It was super informative. I have a question related to what you mentioned in the beginning, but also just briefly at the end
Mhm.
about how you kind of pulled from these exemplary um, programs that exist in other organizations, but also other states. You mentioned Massachusetts. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about what that looked like, what pieces you pulled, and how you implemented that into the policy that you guys created.
Yeah, no problem. We really wanted to make this broad um, for everyone because there's so many different things happening, sustainability reasons, and I see a lot of policies that were very specific to maybe cleaning products or things like that though. But with the state, we are involved with all different aspects when it comes to different parts of the state government. So I know building materials and embodied carbon definitely wanted to include that because it's not usually talked about. And because we do update our codes, our building codes, and if anyone's questions, I could put you in the right put you in with those right people to talk about that though. But we wanted to include um, bike lane. We really wanted to encompass a lot of things. So whatever, we saw from other states, like, oh, that's really good. Didn't think about that. Looking at what we're doing currently to just kind of incorporate as much as possible. So that's kind of what the background is when doing a lot of research. Um, and I'm sure we could have missed something though, but we're happy to include that or reevaluate some of those things. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I have a question. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Lily.
Sorry, I was just curious. It was really interesting hearing more about kind of the process and like what went into sort of putting together resources for sustainable procurement
Mhm.
just writ large. And I was curious in terms of operationalizing it, are there like any resources, lists, or maybe even scorecards that evaluate if products are aligning with best practices, or do you find that that falls more under the like contracting process?
I'm somewhat new to the contracting process, so I see that more aligned there. I've been part of a couple so far, and I probably will be going forward for this specific reason. So, I think, when there's a new contract going forward or anything like this, and I could probably get more information from our procurement team to the exact process. So, but yeah, I'll just take cleaning products, for example, even though that's pretty well established though, but making sure we identify before going out with an RFP, like this is what we're looking for. And then kind of figure out what the scoring criteria is. We do have that scoring criteria based on whatever the contract is. Um, so I see it more on the contract, but that doesn't mean, we can't think about this in the future. Like I said, this kind of new. We just have I think two or three contracts. We just incorporated the language in here. Um, so it's kind of a learning process, but we hope to improve on this going forward.
Ryan, this is Krishna Winston from Middletown. I'm wondering how complicated it is for a municipality to piggyback onto an existing state contract.
That's a great question. I know municipalities can use our state contracts as if you're talking about any modification or anything, I would have to talk to our procurement team. I'm not sure how that works though, but municipalities are absolutely able to use our state contract. So, um, if there wasn't one you saw on that list on the website, feel free to reach out and I can kind of verify if there's something you're specifically looking for.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Lauren, I see your hand up.
Thanks, Ryan. If I was a resident that's working on a board of commission, this was a great presentation, by the way, and I was interested in bringing up in my board of commission meeting that maybe it might be beneficial to adopt our own environmental purchasing policy. What, in your opinion, would be like the first best step that my municipality could take at that point?
Honestly, I think the first step, and that might have been like one of the first best practices, is figure out what you want. What's your goals? Figure that out first, and then go from there, see how they're obtainable. I always say start small because start something small and then build upon that. Because sometimes when you start big, it's just too much going on and it might not be as successful. So start with something small. Just kind of list out what your expectations are, what your goals. If you're looking, um, you know, like just say cleaning product, let's start right there, you know, realizing, oh, hey, our products are not most healthy, there's very toxic. So let's start with that and switch over to more environmentally friendly products. Um, Office paper, that's something, like what kind of, how is the paper, is it reusable? Is it recycled? Things like that. Think about when doing those purchasing. Even lighting, office, the building stuff, lighting is such a low-hanging fruit with quick paybacks. LEDs are a thing. Um, Working with the utilities on that. I'm kind of switching a little bit off from EPP though, but you got to also think about that if you're purchasing on your own. Like look at the most efficient product. So start small, set your goals and then build upon that going forward.
That's
And
awesome. Thank you.
I know a lot of it probably comes down to what's your financial situation too? Financing is always a big part in these conversations. So, think of your goals, think what your spend is. Are there grants out there? Things like that.
Great. Thank you. I'm a big fan of small steps, so just to get those small steps out there is awesome. Thank you.
I have a question from Jody in the chat. First, she shares her thanks and then asks, how is the policy enforced or audited? Thinking of purchasing that is not centrally managed, and then also for vendor/supply verification.
That's a great question, and we haven't gotten to that point. We are, like I said, we're starting brand new. We just started asking a couple of vendors to um, send us some sample reports of what their sales for EPP versus non-EPP are. And this is something we want to do going forward. So I'm open to advice on, if you have suggestions of what the best practices are. Um, we're working on sending something out to suppliers that maybe either like, hey, please send us reports, so, but going forward, future contracts, we're gonna want to start requiring X, Y, Z. Um, and I'd like to get reports on a quarterly basis, start tracking that. So yeah, so was it Jody? Feel free to reach out to me and talk a little bit more on that if you have more input and guidance.
Do we have any other questions? Feel free to once again come off of mute or put them in the chat. I'll give everyone a second. Well, perfect. We have another question from Jody in the chat. Do you have examples of where these policies have saved money? You mentioned thinking long term, so examples of that.
Not anything related to this right now. I hope so in the future, but I could think more really when it comes to doing energy efficiency products on our buildings. A lot of my background is on that, on energy management. So um, when we do projects like that with our buildings, for lighting is the perfect example because the payback's very short and the savings are a lot longer, which is great. Or if you combine projects together, like something with a low-hanging fruit like lighting versus something that has a higher payback, like HVAC, uh, you have the payback's decent, and again, the savings just last longer because you're doing more efficient work and stuff. Sometimes when unfortunately, if you have an emergency, you do try to look for the more efficient though, but sometimes it's not always the case. So, but you always kind of, it's hard to think about the long term in some situations because you got to make sure you're building or whatever your business is, excuse me, is operating efficiently. So sometimes it's not, people don't always think that. So you got to kind of get into the mindset of thinking the long term. Um, so that's again, hopefully with products and services, that's something we'll consider that going forward.
I'll jump in with a question. If nobody else wants to jump ahead, and apologies, my camera is not working this morning. Lee Welpton, with the Environmental Infrastructure Program team at the Connecticut Green Bank. Ryan, just really appreciate, as we've chatted previously, procurement innovation and achieving impact through contract structures. It's such an underutilized tool in being able
Mhm.
to drive different forms of, impact and objective. And I'm curious, like when you're mentioning about even something as seemingly mundane as landscaping contracts, are those also areas where you can start to conceive of cost savings through lower water use, lower chemical inputs,
Mhm.
um, and potentially even in a way that would help a municipality achieve some stormwater management or green infrastructure benefit as well? Do you see some limitations to the kind of creative ways that anyone creating these contracts can stack co-benefits within the sustainable procurement and environmentally, preferable purchasing? Obviously, we can take some of that offline. I'm curious
Mhm.
about it, but just from a high level view.
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure there are limitations. Landscaping, it seems to be a hot topic. I know there's been things in the legislative session regarding leaf blowers recently, kind of banning those or phasing them out. And there's been actually meetings recently with folks in the industry. I think I think it just needs to be planned out thoughtfully on that. I think I think banning things right away, it's difficult. I think you know if a municipality wants to, I think this goes back to like you got to establish like what do you have? Is this feasible? Can we are we able to make the transition? Start small, you know. Uh, Kind of an example, kind of not though. Actually, for our building here, we planted native uh, a pollinator garden in our plaza and stuff. I don't know if anyone's ever been here for 450 Columbus Boulevard though, but we did that last year and we also did it again this year. But when we did it for the first time last year, we actually didn't have to hire a landscaper. We do have an irrigation system, it's like it's kind of a drip thing where it is being watered, but we didn't have to hire a landscaper to maintain it or get all the weeds are out. It killed all the weeds and everything. So we actually saved money without having to hire a landscaper, which was pretty impressive. Um, and so we're like, well, where can else we do this at our facilities? How can we implement this? Because this was a very quick thing, no cost to us except for purchasing the seeds. I was like, this is great. Um, it might not be feasible at other locations if there's no sort of irrigation system and it requires people to go out and water all the time. That's also not feasible if you don't have the staffing or resources and not the money to purchase a landscape to do it though. But um, I always like that example and what we're doing and we'll continue doing that going forward as well. Um,
That's a great example. And so too, I'll kind of piggyback on that to say it would ostensibly be the case that you could procure, you know, within a contract structure. This is, I guess, a question. It's just a long lead up, sorry. Um, you could kind of reinforce the procurement of locally produced soil
mhm.
products
Right.
from, post-consumer food waste,
Yeah.
where relevant, where appropriate, and get a bit more circular economy going, so to
Mhm.
say.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it didn't cost much to purchase the bag of seeds, and we made it an exercise. We kind of did it around Earth Day. We're like, hey, we're doing our part. We want to showcase that DAS is very involved here. Um, and we worked with other folks if people were interested and like to do this more at other locations too. If it's something that's seems economically feasible, does not require a lot of staffing or resources. So um, again, I think that goes back to I think Torin, kind of starting small. That's something small.
Excellent. I have a question from Jess in the chat. She says, apologies if I missed this. Will you offer or do you offer a preferred vendor list?
The list that's on the website, I think that's our preferred list right now that supports EPP. I want to continue to update that as new contracts and things come on board, whatever the products and services are doing it. Uh, so that is the plan. So right now, that's the list we have. But if there's something that's you don't see it on there, maybe we just missed it. Well, for whatever reason, let us know. I think, Krishna, you had the same questions about that. So like, if there's a contract, you're like, do we have this? Let me know. I'll I'll work with procurement team to see if there is one.
I also have a question that kind of relates to the website. When you were speaking about it, you had shown that there are examples of different policies from towns across Connecticut.
Mhm.
And I was just wondering if you could dive a little bit deeper into that. And are there similarities between those policies, even though they're in different towns? And just like kind of overarchingly, are there elements that you'd ideally really love to see in all municipalities' sustainable procurement policies?
Great question. Yeah, there was definitely a lot of similarities. So the ones I posted onto the website were definitely similar, and that helped us shape the policy we have. Um, Not everyone had the same best practices or sustainability factors. A lot of them did have very similar ones. So I would like to see towns or other states or something that are, again, I guess it depends on the feasibility if they can do these things, but to make it more broader, encompassing a lot more than just maybe certain specific things. That'd be helpful because when reviewing or researching, there's things I didn't think about when it came to the EPP. Um, so so it was a great learning experiencing for me. So I think, yeah, just make it more broader if feasible.
Thank you. That's really helpful. I feel like sometimes, at least when I'm thinking about it, I would want to know like specifically like what products are you using, but it definitely makes sense if you're more encompassing, you're able to take that wider lens and hopefully have more impact, kind of like all of what you've been touching on throughout the presentation. So thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. I know some contracts, it's not just one vendor on a contract. There's going to be multiple vendors, so it's going to be hard to list every single product unless that's something they do submit to us. And that's something I don't know if we would exactly have it on that page, or you have to go to our contracting portal. Then you could just get that information there, though. Um, I think Massachusetts or maybe New York, I can't remember which one. Like they actually kind of lists all the products and stuff, or reference the contract that they might be in, because sometimes products are in multiple contracts depending on what it is. I don't think we're at that level yet. Maybe in the future, we can get there.
Any other questions? I'll give people a second if you want to type any in the chat or once again come off of mute and share.
Yeah, Ryan, quick question for you. Thanks for being here today. And I'm wondering if you do look at other states regionally, nationally, compare policies that they've implemented, thinking about implementing in order to craft what you guys do and the lists that you guys make.
Oh, absolutely. Like Massachusetts, it's been probably one of my go-tos there. And they're a neighbor, and we do collaborate on other things. I think our cleaning product is something we collaborated together before my time, the contract there. I definitely looked at New England states, um, since they're, close to us. So, but I did look at other states across the country, what kind of information they have. We actually do meet New England states on for or like our Greener Gov program, and I have brought up EPP into the conversations to kind of see what other states are doing because for us, it's like I said, it's not a new concept though, but we haven't really done any reporting or monitoring, and so we're starting to do that now. So working with them on this and collecting information has been really valuable and really interesting to hear what they've done. So there are ongoing conversations on this topic and collaborations.
That's great. Thank you.
Any other questions? We have one from Jody in the chat saying, are there any software programs that can help with this?
We're actually talking with our IT folks to see what softwares are out there. I know states have used this, so we're just trying to see, what would be best for Connecticut if it's, do we do in-house or purchase? I think because we haven't really collected much information. We just started. So I think right now we'll kind of keep it like to, maybe Excel or Power BI until we get more and more information and on a regular basis that helps us define what kind of software we want to get. Um, or if we can incorporate this into our contracting software. That would be easier actually, but I don't know if that's feasible or if that can happen. But uh, that is part of the conversation for the future once we get more and more data.
Thank you. We also have another question in the chat from Cyril saying, any federal pushback on EPP involving DEI? Sorry if this was touched upon earlier. It's been running back and forth from the computer. And then I guess that pushback would only matter if funding has been federal. So if you could touch upon funding too, that would be great.
Yeah, unfortunately, I've not been involved with that side of that. I would have to talk to our procurement team. We do have a small business and minority business program, and I think um, if you want to reach out to me, email me, and I can put you in touch with them because they would have more information on that. Unfortunately, I don't. Um, I don't. Don't quote me. I don't. I haven't heard anything about any pushback, but again, they'll know more than me.
Any other questions? Feel free to come off mute. Last call, throw them in the chat. All right. Well, then I think that's all for today. Thank you very much, Ryan, for presenting. This was fantastic, especially the questions, great questions, excellent responses. Once again, this will be recorded and posted on Sustainable CT's website. So if there's anything you want to follow up with afterwards or watch back, this will be recorded and posted. Thank you, everyone, for coming today, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.